One day my husband turned to me and said, "From now on, buy your own food. Stop living off me." I quietly agreed and didn't say a word. But when his birthday came and he filled the house with 20 relatives who loved to eat for free, the look on their faces when they saw the kitchen froze instantly. Before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The morning it happened, the kitchen smelled of coffee and the faint, earthy tang of autumn creeping through the cracked window. Sunlight spilled across the oak table, its surface scarred from years of family life, crayon marks from Emma's toddler years, a burn from a misplaced casserole dish, a nick from the time I'd chopped onions too quickly during a Christmas rush. I sat there, cradling a mug, the steam curling upward like a fragile hope. My husband, David, stood at the counter, slicing an apple with the precision of a man who always knew his place in the world. His broad shoulders were tense, his movements deliberate, as if the act of cutting fruit required his full attention. "From now on, buy your own food," he said, his voice sharp, slicing through the quiet. "Stop living off me." The words hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath. My fingers tightened around the mug, the heat searing my palms, but I didn't let go. I stared at him, searching for a hint of humor, a flicker of regret, anything to soften the sting. But his eyes stayed fixed on the apple, his jaw set, as if he hadn't just shattered the fragile balance of our 12-year marriage. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came. What could I say? David wasn't cruel, not in the overt shouting way. He was steady, predictable, the kind of man who paid bills on time and remembered anniversaries. But lately, a fog had settled between us, thick with unspoken resentments. His long hours at the tech firm, his new role as vice president, the pressure of being the sole provider, it had changed him. Or maybe it had changed us. I'd chalked it up to stress, to the grind of life, but this was different. This was a line drawn in the sand. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely audible. The mug trembled as I set it down, the coffee untouched. David didn't look at me. He wiped the knife on a dish towel, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out the door. The click of the latch echoed in the empty kitchen, louder than any argument we'd ever had. I sat there for a long time, staring at the table's scars, each one a story of our life together. The kitchen had always been my domain, the heart of our home. I'd spent years here, cooking meals that brought us together, lasagna for David's birthdays, pancakes for Emma's sleepovers, soups that warmed us through winter. I'd given up my career as a graphic designer when Emma was born, trading late nights at the studio for late nights rocking her to sleep. I'd managed our budget, stretched every dollar to keep us comfortable while David climbed the corporate ladder. I wasn't living off him. I was holding our life together. But his words had cut deep, exposing a truth I hadn't wanted to face. He didn't see my work, my sacrifices, my love. To him, I was a burden. The days that followed were a study in silence. I didn't confront him, didn't demand an explanation. Instead, I retreated into myself, turning his words over like a puzzle I couldn't solve. Buy your own food. Stop living off me. They weren't just about money. They were a rejection, a declaration that I was less than a partner, less than equal. I'd always prided myself on keeping the peace, on smoothing over the rough edges of our life, but this time I couldn't. The hurt was too raw, the wound too deep. I started small, practical. I opened a separate bank account, transferring the modest savings I'd tucked away over the years. A few $100s from birthday gifts, a small inheritance from my grandmother, scraps saved from grocery budgets. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a lifeline I hadn't realized I needed. I began buying groceries for Emma and myself, storing them in a locked cabinet in the pantry. The key hung on a chain around my neck, a quiet act of defiance. David noticed the cabinet, the lock, the key, but he said nothing. His silence was louder than his words had been. I cooked only for Emma and me, simple meals, nothing extravagant. Pasta with butter and parmesan, roasted vegetables, sandwiches with the crusty bread Emma loved. David, who'd always relied on my cooking, started bringing home takeout or eating at the office. The kitchen, once alive with the clatter of pots and the aroma of simmering sauces, grew cold, sterile. Emma, 10 and sharp as a tack, noticed the shift. Her brown eyes, so like her father's, would dart between us at dinner, but she didn't ask questions. Not yet. She was too perceptive, too attuned to the undercurrents of our home. I began to notice other things, too. The way David's phone buzzed late at night, the way he'd angle the screen away from me, the way he'd linger at work, coming home long after Emma was asleep. I didn't ask, didn't pry. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading too much into it. But the doubt was there, a seed planted by his words, growing in the quiet spaces of our marriage. David's birthday was 3 weeks away, a looming deadline that filled me with both dread and a strange, quiet resolve. Every year, it was the same, a grand celebration. Our house transformed into a banquet hall for his family. His mother, Patricia, would arrive first, her perfume a cloud of lavender and judgment, her sharp eyes cataloging every detail of my home. She'd comment on the curtains. A bit dated, don't you think? Or the table settings. Paper napkins, Laura. Her voice dripping with condescension. David's brothers, Tom and Mike, would follow with their wives, Sarah and Lisa, and their kids. A total of 20 relatives who descended like a flock of hungry birds, eating everything in sight and leaving a trail of dishes, crumbs, and complaints. I'd spend days preparing lasagna, garlic bread, salads, desserts, while David played the gracious host, basking in their praise. I'd smile, nod, clean up, and collapse exhausted when they left, never once hearing a thank you. This year, I decided, would be different. The plan took shape slowly, born from the quiet anger that simmered beneath my calm exterior. It wasn't rage, not exactly. It was something colder, more deliberate. I didn't tell anyone, not even my sister, Rachel, who'd been urging me to stand up to David for years, or my best friend Claire, who'd seen the cracks in our marriage long before I had. I kept it locked inside, just like the groceries in the pantry. 2 weeks before the party, I stopped stocking the kitchen with staples. No extra flour for cakes, no sugar for cookies, no meat for roasts. I bought just enough for Emma and me. Milk, eggs, bread, a few vegetables. Nothing more. David didn't notice. He was too busy with work, or so he claimed. I suspected he was avoiding me, avoiding the tension that hung between us like a storm cloud. His late nights grew more frequent, his excuses vaguer. I pushed the thoughts away, focusing on the plan. The week before the party, I took Emma to the library, a ritual we'd kept since she was little. She curled up in a corner with a book about space, her favorite subject, while I pretended to read a magazine. Instead, I watched her, memorizing the way her brow furrowed when she was deep in thought, the way her fingers traced the pages. She was the reason I'd stayed, the reason I'd swallowed so many slights over the years. But she was also the reason I couldn't keep going like this. I wanted her to see a mother who stood up for herself, who wasn't invisible. The day before the party, Patricia called, her voice as grating as ever. "Laura, dear, we're all so excited for tomorrow. You're making your famous lasagna, I presume, and that chocolate cake David loves, the one with the ganache." I smiled into the phone, my voice sweet as honey. "Oh, Patricia, don't worry. It'll be a day to remember." I hung up and walked to the kitchen. The fridge was nearly empty, holding only a carton of milk, a few eggs, a bag of carrots, and a stick of butter. The pantry was bare except for my locked cabinet, which contained a box of pasta, a can of beans, a jar of peanut butter, and a small bag of rice, enough for Emma and me for a few days. The stove was cold, the counters pristine. It was a kitchen stripped of its purpose, a blank canvas for what was to come. David's birthday dawned bright and cold, the kind of October day that made you want to wrap yourself in a scarf and breathe in the crisp air. Emma was at a sleepover at her friend Lily's house, a deliberate choice on my part. I wanted her out of the house for this, spared from the tension I knew was coming. David woke late, as he always did on weekends, and wandered into the kitchen in his flannel pajamas, his hair mussed from sleep. "Where's the coffee?" he asked, frowning at the empty pot. "Out," I said simply, sipping my own cup. I'd brewed just enough for myself, the last of the beans I'd bought with my own money. He grumbled, rubbing his eyes. "The family's coming at 3. You've got everything ready, right?" I nodded, my face a mask of calm. "Everything's taken care of." He didn't ask what that meant. He never did. By 2 o'clock, the house was spotless. I'd vacuumed the living room, dusted the shelves, set out extra chairs in the dining room. I'd even polished the silverware, though I knew it wouldn't be used. The kitchen, however, remained untouched. No pots simmered on the stove. No trays of appetizers waited on the counter. The dining table was bare, not even a tablecloth to hide its scratches. It was a stage set for a reckoning. At 3 sharp, the doorbell rang. Patricia swept in first, her perfume a cloud of lavender and judgment, her arms laden with a gaudy gift bag for David. Her eyes scanned the living room, narrowing slightly at the lack of decorations. "No balloons this year, Laura?" she asked, her tone light but pointed. "Not this year," I said, smiling, keeping it simple. Behind her came Tom and Sarah, their 2 teenage boys, Ethan and Noah, trailing like sullen shadows, their eyes glued to their phones. Mike and Lisa followed with their 3 young kids, Sophie, Mia, and little Ben, who immediately ran to the backyard, shrieking. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the entire clan filled the house, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of laughter, complaints, and demands. The air buzzed with the familiar chaos of a family gathering, the kind that used to make me feel needed, even if it was exhausting. "Laura, darling, where's the food?" Patricia asked, her smile tight as she glanced at the empty dining room. Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp, already cataloging my failures. "In the kitchen," I said, gesturing toward the doorway. "Help yourselves." They filed in, David at the rear, his brow furrowed. He'd been distracted all day, checking his phone, muttering about a work email. Now, his attention snapped to the present as he followed his family into the kitchen. The chatter stopped abruptly, like a radio switched off. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as 20 pairs of eyes took in the sight. An empty fridge, its door open to reveal a carton of milk, a few eggs, and a lonely bag of carrots. A pantry with nothing but my locked cabinet, the key glinting against my chest. A stove as cold as the November air outside. "What the hell is this?" David's voice was low, but it carried, slicing through the stunned silence. I turned to him, my expression serene, though my heart pounded in my chest. "You told me to buy my own food, David. So I did. For Emma and me. I assumed you'd take care of the rest." The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the fridge and the distant giggles of the kids outside. Patricia's mouth hung open, her lipstick smudged slightly from shock. Tom coughed awkwardly, shifting his weight. Sarah's eyes darted to the floor, as if she could avoid the tension by studying the tiles. Sophie, Mike's 6-year-old, tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm hungry." David's face reddened, his hands clenching at his sides. "This is a joke, right? You're embarrassing me in front of my family." "Embarrassing you?" I said, my voice still calm but edged with steel. "You said I was living off you, so I stopped. I stopped cooking, stopped planning, stopped carrying the weight of your family's expectations. If you want a party, you'll need to figure it out yourselves." The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Patricia recovered first, her voice shrill. "Laura, this is unacceptable. You can't invite us here and not feed us." "I didn't invite you," I said, meeting her gaze. "David did. This is his party." All eyes turned to David, who stood frozen, his hands still clenched, his face a mix of anger and something else, something that looked like fear. For the first time in years, he looked small, stripped of the confidence he wore like armor. Mike, ever the peacemaker, stepped forward, his phone already in hand. "Okay, let's just order some pizzas. No big deal." "No," I said, my voice firm, cutting through the room like a whip. "I'm done. For years, I've cooked, cleaned, and played the perfect hostess while you all ate and left without a thank you. I've spent days preparing, weeks budgeting, years swallowing my exhaustion to make these gatherings happen. David made it clear I'm on my own now. So you're welcome to stay, but you'll need to figure out the food yourselves." The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. The family exchanged glances, the air thick with discomfort. Patricia's lips pursed, her hands tightening on her purse. Ethan and Noah, Tom's boys, looked up from their phones, their eyes wide. Lisa fidgeted, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. The kids outside were still laughing, oblivious to the tension inside. Then, to my surprise, David's cousin Jenny, a quiet woman who rarely spoke at these gatherings, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but steady, her eyes meeting mine. "She's right," she said. "Laura's always done everything for these parties. We show up, eat, leave dishes everywhere, and never thank her. I didn't realize how much work it was. I'm sorry, Laura." Her words were a crack in the dam, a small but seismic shift. Lisa nodded slowly, her voice tentative. "We've taken it for granted," she admitted. "I thought it was just what you did. I didn't think about how much it cost you, in time or money or energy." Tom scratched the back of his neck, his usual bravado gone. "Yeah, I guess we've been kind of oblivious," he muttered. Patricia huffed, her arms crossing tightly. "This is still no way to treat family," she said, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Even she couldn't deny the truth in the room. David, however, wasn't ready to back down. He stepped closer, his voice low, meant for me alone. "This was petty, Laura. You didn't have to do this." I met his gaze, unflinching. Was it petty? Or was it just me listening to you for once? You drew a line, David. I'm just standing on my side of it. He didn't answer. His jaw tightened, and he turned away, joining Mike at the counter as they scrolled through pizza delivery options. The family scrambled to fill the void, their voices rising in a nervous hum. Tom offered to run to the store for drinks and snacks. Sarah corralled the kids, assigning them tasks like setting out paper plates. Even Patricia, after a few more grumbles, pulled out a bag of chips she'd brought as a backup and set them on the counter. I stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, watching it all unfold. It wasn't triumph I felt. Not yet. It was something quieter, something like relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one running the show. I wasn't invisible. The rest of the day was a blur of makeshift solutions. Pizzas arrived, hot and greasy, the boxes piling up on the dining table. Tom returned with soda, chips, and a questionable selection of store-bought cookies. The kids devoured everything, their laughter filling the house. The adults ate in awkward silence at first, but as the evening wore on, the tension eased. Stories were shared, jokes told, the chaos of a family gathering taking over. It wasn't my usual spread of lasagna and chocolate cake, but it was enough. I didn't lift a finger. I sat with a glass of water, watching as David's brothers took charge, as their wives cleaned up spills, as the kids cleared their plates without being asked. It was a small shift, but it felt monumental. For the first time, they were contributing, not just consuming. When Emma came home that evening, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes widened at the sight of pizza boxes and soda cans. "Mom," "What happened to the big dinner?" she asked, her voice curious but not accusing. I knelt down to her level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I decided to take a break this year," I said. "Your dad and his family handled it." She tilted her head, studying me with those sharp, knowing eyes. "Are you okay?" I smiled, the first real smile I'd felt all day. "Yeah, kiddo, I'm okay." That night, after the family left, earlier than usual, with awkward goodbyes and a few murmured thank yous, David and I sat in the living room. The house was quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt like a held breath. The pizza boxes were stacked by the door, the remnants of a party that wasn't mine. "We need to talk," David said finally, his voice low, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "We do," I agreed, my tone even. "But not tonight. Tonight I'm done." He didn't push. For once, he listened. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling of the life we'd built. David didn't apologize outright, but he started making small gestures, brewing coffee in the mornings, enough for both of us, buying groceries for the house, not just for himself. He lingered at dinner, asking Emma about her day, glancing at me as if waiting for me to speak. I didn't. Not yet. I began looking for part-time work, something to call my own. I found a freelance graphic design gig, small but enough to remind me of the woman I'd been before motherhood, before marriage. I enrolled in an online course, learning new design software, rediscovering a spark I'd buried under years of domestic routine. Emma noticed the change, her questions growing bolder. "Are you and Dad fighting?" she asked one night over dinner. Our dinner, just the two of us, a plate of spaghetti with homemade sauce. "Not fighting," I said carefully, twirling my fork. "Just figuring things out." She nodded, her young face serious. "I like this version of you, Mom. You seem stronger." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that this wasn't just about David or his family. It was about me, about the woman I'd let myself forget. I started cooking again, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to. Simple recipes at first, roasted chicken, vegetable soups, then more adventurous ones, like a Moroccan tagine I'd always wanted to try. The kitchen filled with the smells of cumin and lemon, garlic and fresh herbs. It wasn't silent anymore. It was mine. I also started noticing more about David. The late-night texts, the way he'd leave the room to take calls, the faint scent of perfume, not mine, on his jacket one evening. I didn't confront him, not yet. But the seed of doubt grew, and with it, a quiet resolve to protect myself, to protect Emma. 3 months after the birthday, I sat down with Claire over coffee at a small cafe downtown. The air was thick with the scent of espresso and cinnamon rolls, a welcome change from the tension of home. Claire, with her blunt honesty and fierce loyalty, had been my rock since college. She'd seen me through the early days of my marriage, the birth of Emma, the slow erosion of my confidence. "You're different," she said, stirring sugar into her latte. "Not just the kitchen stunt, though that was epic. You're standing taller." I laughed, a sound that felt foreign but good. I don't know about that, but I'm done being invisible. She leaned forward, her eyes serious. What's next, Laura? You can't just keep living like this, with him acting like you're a roommate he resents. I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth ground me. I'm figuring it out. I've got the freelance gig, the course. I'm saving money. If things don't change. Claire nodded, understanding. You're preparing. Good. You deserve more than this. That conversation stayed with me, a turning point. I began setting boundaries, small but firm. I stopped doing David's laundry, letting his shirts pile up until he noticed. I left his work emails unanswered when he asked me to just take care of it. I started saying no, and each time, it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. A year later, David's birthday came around again. This time, we planned it together. Not a feast, not a performance, but a small gathering. Emma, a few close friends, and us. I made lasagna, but David helped chop vegetables, his hands clumsy but earnest. Emma set the table, humming a song from her school choir. The house was warm again, not with obligation, but with something new, something tentative, like a seedling breaking through soil. The family noticed the change at the next gathering. Patricia was quieter, her expectations tempered. Tom and Mike brought dishes to share, a casserole, a tray of brownies, small gestures that spoke volumes. The kids said thank you without prompting, their plates cleared before they ran to play. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for David and me, we were still navigating the fog, but the ship felt steadier. We talked more, not just about logistics, but about us, our fears, our hopes, the things we'd let slip away. I confronted him about the late-night texts, the perfume, the distance. He denied an affair, but his eyes betrayed a guilt I couldn't ignore. We started counseling, a step I hadn't expected him to agree to. It was slow, painful, but it was a start. The kitchen, once a battleground, became a place of possibility again. I cooked for the joy of it, for Emma's laughter as she licked batter from a spoon, for the quiet moments when David and I shared a meal and actually talked. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was home, not just in the kitchen, but in myself.